welcome to our October live chat. This is the fourth Sunday in October. That is the third Sunday in October. We normally have our live chats on the third Sunday when we can run on a regular schedule, but sometimes for some reason, one reason or another, we will have it on the fourth Sunday. It just happened to fall on the fourth Sunday this time. So welcome everybody. Let me just give you a couple of reminders while folks are still coming in. I don't want anybody to miss the good stuff. Right now we have still on sale for another 3-4 days, whenever the end of October, our current course on brushwork, and it's half price throughout the rest of this month, and then it goes back to regular price. That's on DianneMizeAcademy.com. So a lot of you have taken advantage of that. Everybody seems to be really enthusiastic about that course, and of course we're always enthusiastic when our students are enthusiastic. So that's coming, and then look in November for another new course to come online on the Academy at half price. I'll tell you more about that in the newsletter as the nearer the time comes. And also, let me remind you, most everybody who's present at the chat probably already receives our newsletters. We call them newsletters. It's mainly you're on our mailing list, and that means that every Wednesday you get really first dibs on the quick tips as they come out, and also every Saturday you get a little composing tip from me, and sometimes a little bit of life's meanderings, art relating to living, that sort of thing. So that's my excuse to give you a little extra art thought on Saturday morning. Every Saturday morning we announce all of our new courses. Everything new we do, we announce through the newsletter. So if you want to stay on target and up to date with everything we're doing, go to either DianneMize.com, where our lessons are. Those are just the individual lessons, not the courses. Or go to DianneMizeAcademy.com, where the courses are. In both places, you can subscribe to our newsletter. That's what it's called. Sign up for the mailing list. Whatever it says, do it, and you'll be in place then to always know when we're up to something, doing something new. You never can tell what we might do next. Okay, I see everybody coming up. I think everybody's excited about the idea of rhythm and how rhythm we actually create rhythm in painting, whether we know it or not. And when we can use rhythm intentionally, we can create extraordinary paintings. So I'm not going to say a whole lot more about that right now, because we're going to get into it really deep in just a few minutes. So while folks coming in, let's see, folks are saying hello to us, and welcome Jennifer. I see a new member. Oh yes, and about the membership. Remember how this works now. Members ask questions. We're sorry that we can't allow our subscribers, all of our subscribers, to ask questions, and other viewers, but if we left it wide open like that, the questions would scroll so fast we wouldn't be able to catch them. We tried it when we first started these things, and it just was impossible to manage, and so we just decided to make it available to members to ask questions. Anybody else, if you have a question about anything that comes up and you're not a member, just go to the comments section, and I'll catch that question for you when I check the comments tomorrow morning. And I'll always answer every time you make a comment on a video, I always answer those. All right, let's see, who else is online? Maurice and Lisa, Jennifer, Mary Ellen, and Sheila. And Jennifer says, I just joined after Diane's quick tips on YouTube. Look forward to learning how to paint with oils. Well, not only oils, but painting with the principles that make painting work. And so we'll see how it goes, and hope that you stick with us, because we just love having people to work with. All right, I think maybe we might dive. Do I need to, Roger, can you think of anything else I need to remind them of? If I covered the bases?
I believe so.
All right. As far as we'll know, our November chat will be on the third Sunday as usual. But always check if you are a subscriber or a member and you click the notification button, YouTube will always send out a message, or we will not send out messages through YouTube to all our subscribers and our members. And so if you want to get those updates, and especially anything that we are announcing through YouTube, through the communication, be sure that you click the notification button. That's in shape of a bell or something, I don't know, but you folks know how to do that, I'm sure. All right, if Roger's ready, we'll get going with rhythm in painting. So we will, I have a little video prepared for you about rhythm in painting and how it relates to rhythm in music. And I think it's absolutely fascinating how those two are so connected. And so ask your questions in the chat. Members ask questions in the chat after the video is over. Okay, Roger, roll that video.
In music, we have rhythm in time, but in painting, we have rhythm in two-dimensional space. In music, rhythm can change in volume, and in painting, rhythm can change in emphasis. In music, rhythm can change in tempo, the number of beats per measure. The tempo can change in painting too, with the length of a directional movement. And in both music and painting, it's the repetition that creates the rhythm, and it's how it's repeated that determines the kind of rhythm. Think about all the kinds of rhythm we have in music. We have the flowing rhythm of the waltz, but we have a flowing rhythm in painting too, with the curving rhythm. In music, we have the precise rhythm of the march. In painting, we have the repetition of the straight, directional movement. That gives us a stabilizing rhythm. Sometimes in music, a piece will start out very, very slow in rhythm and then speed up to a much faster rhythm. In painting, we can create the illusion of distance by allowing images to get from larger to smaller as they get closer and closer to what we would perceive as distance. Both of these rhythms in painting and in music are called a progressive rhythm. In music, the notes are often short and quick and precise. We call this staccato. In painting, we can make short, quick strokes with our paintbrush. That is staccato. Another way we can create staccato in painting is by changing the direction abruptly. Let's explore this photo of a blue jay and see how many kinds of these visual rhythms we can find here. Now, remember, it only takes two things to create visual rhythm. It takes a directional movement and the repetition of that directional movement. A directional movement can go in a curve or it can go straight. It can go in variations of curves as well as variations of straight. Within straight, we have a straight vertical, we can have a straight horizontal, or we can have a straight diagonal that can move in any of our diagonal directions. And we can have combinations of these. It's the variation of those, then, that give us the many kinds of rhythm that we can achieve. Now let's get to it and see what we can find in this blue jay. So I'm going to look first of all for a curving or flowing rhythm. Curving edges, curving motions, a directional movement that is curving is flowing. When we are curving it in repetition, we are creating a flowing rhythm. First of all, I see a curving right down the edge. Now we can look along edges for these directional movements, for these rhythms, or we can look in other places. Let's look in the edges first. And then we find, well, I see a repetition of it, or a part of it there. Then I see it curving on the other side, and we see a curving and straight. That is the curving or the flowing and then the straight. We call the straight directional movement a stabilizing movement. And when it's repeated, we call it a stabilizing rhythm. And so we do see the straight repeated here. And actually, we see two repetitions, one on either side. We also see straight repeated here. Could you see that in the white space? I'll repeat it in the dark space here. See that straight repeated there. And as we move throughout, we can see several places where we have a straight directional movement. That means we have capability in this subject alone already for the curving and the straight, for the flowing and the stabilizing. Let's look for more flowing. We find it in the leaves right here and here, where we can see the really close-up of those leaves. And we're going to see that repeated throughout as we look for the leaf shapes. We'll see that some of those leaf shapes actually give a straight directional movement. Now remember, it's the repetition. When we start seeing these repeated, then we begin to develop a rhythm. It's curving along, is flowing, but it's not necessarily a flowing rhythm throughout. And what we normally will do as painters is we will allow this rhythm to also play itself along our visual path. And let's see, let's just look for just a few more just for fun. Oh, I see lots of flowing down in here, flowing in here. You get the idea. So when you're looking for rhythm in your subject, look for specific directional movements. Look for curving areas where we have curving, And if you see lots of repetition or even just a few repetitions of curving, that's potential for a flowing rhythm. Look for straight, regardless of whether it's going in any one of our diagonals or whether it's going vertical or horizontal. If it's straight and it's repeated, it's going to give us that stabilizing rhythm. Let's look for some staccato. Now remember, the staccato is the very, very quick little strokes, quick little areas, tiny little vibrations, such as we see many times in textures. And I see right up here, right in here, you see all these quick little textures we see in this little bunch of foliage up here? See it throughout, and we see it up here. So this is really in kind of a little mossy texture. Right, that creates an interest in, when we create a staccato rhythm or find a staccato rhythm, we can create interesting areas in our painting by giving it a little bit more energy and action. We see more staccato right down in here in these little areas, right in here. So you may not see a lot, you don't have to have a lot. But once you have any repetition of any one of these kinds of directional movement, then you're going to begin to have a rhythm of that. The progressive rhythm we don't really see here because the image is relatively close up to us and we don't see a movement into distance. But we do have progressive rhythm in this photograph. I probably don't even need to show it to you, but I will. Where the water is closer to us, it is wider, and then as it moves away from us, it gets more narrow and more narrow, even though it gets somewhat wider in some places because of the way the curve changes. Nevertheless, it is decreasing in size, and that repetition, that constant or continuous decrease in size creates a progressive rhythm. The same with all the images, the ones that are up close. As they're moving into distance, they're getting smaller in size, and this mountain in the very background and moving way far into the distance has way decreased in size. So this is a really good example of a progressive rhythm. I think this is a really good place for us to stop and let you ask your questions.
Okie dokie. Before we get the questions, I want to apologize, although we had nothing to do with those daggum commercials popping in there. That's something YouTube does, and they've gotten worse at it, I've noticed, over the past several months. But we have no control over that. And it's not us getting money, it's YouTube getting money. So I do apologize for that. I hope it didn't cause too much disruption for you, and that you were able to click the part that allows you to, what does it call it? Get out of the commercial and get back into the program. Huh? Skip. Yeah, skip it. It just kind of ticks me off, especially ticked me off then. All right. Okay, Jennifer says, this is a paradigm shift for me. Thank you. Well, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, a lot of people are really fascinated about, I don't think enough has been discussed in all the teaching that is done on YouTube, especially in the name of teaching painting. I'm not sure very much has been taught about rhythm, but it actually is such a very important part of what we do as painters, and we're creating rhythm whether we realize it or not. Okay, Alco comes in and says hello, and Bobsy, you just became a new member, and I believe Sheila and Mary Ellen had said hello, and I'm not sure I recognized them before. So, okay, everybody, welcome, and so glad you're joining us. All right, so I'm ready to take questions. One thing that's fascinating, and I didn't define directional movement. Those of you who take the workshops know, or you take the courses, have taken the courses, know what directional movement is. But directional movement is what we see in two-dimensional, you might say in two-dimensional art, that is a visual movement. And there are only two kinds. And anyway, if you look around the world around you, just in your environment, wherever you happen to be right now, you will only find two kinds of directional movement: the curve and straight. That's it. A movement that curves and a movement that goes in a straight direction. Any kind of visual movement is any edge that you see, any edge around a shape has visual movement, or any place where you see maybe one color against another color, or one value against another value. If in the Van Gogh painting, you can see the directional movement of the curve that's moving in this yellow area of the sky against the blue area of the sky. So directional movement is that visual movement we create when we create images. The important thing, the fascinating thing is that everything we see is a combination of variations of directional movement. And so we know that a curve itself can move, can become a full circle. And it just keeps, this is directional movement. Or it can curve in any other direction. Or it can curve, instead of being a circle, it can become an oval. That's the curving in that oval directional movement. And we know that if it's in a circle, it's just a real circle. It's just sort of going around like this, and it doesn't have any directional movement to it except around its circling. But when the oval gets stretched, it begins to have some directional movement to it. Now, an example of that is in the light Van Gogh has in this particular version. We can see it's sort of an oval, and there's a directional movement. Let's use this hand over here. If there's a directional movement that goes in this direction as well as curving. So it's curving and it's also pointing in that direction. The variations of directional movement, as I pointed out to you there, the straight directions, anything that is in moving in a straight line or straight movement, is either vertical, horizontal, or many of the diagonals. And we know the diagonal can tilt in any direction. If you think about the analog clock, it's a wonderful example of all the diagonals. So on an analog clock, from 12 to 6 is a vertical. It can't be a diagonal if it's a vertical. And from 3 to 6, as I'm getting there right now, 3 to 9, I'm sorry, is the horizontal. And the horizontal can only be horizontal. But anything that's tilting in any direction but between any of those is a diagonal. That is a directional movement. Well, everything we see then is made up of directional movements and variations of them, of just those two directional movements and the variations of each one of them. I just think that's so fascinating, and it's so parallel with music, with the beat, the rhythmic beat of music is so parallel there. Okay, I see a question come in. Carol, do you plan out the visual movement before you start the painting, or is it something you consider more as you refine the painting? It begins in the beginning, Carol. It's better if you're doing a painting from something, in other words, as opposed to abstracting. When you are examining the subject that you're about to paint, look for those rhythms in it. Sometimes that can determine where you place it, how you place the emphasis within the painting. And you look for those rhythms that are in it. And one of the exercises that we do in the rhythm course is to actually diagram the rhythms that we see just by making marks, like I did in the when I was showing you the Botticelli. How I was showing you how the curves move in the flowing directions in that painting, and also what I was showing you when I was working with the Blue Jay there. If you just diagram those movements, it'll give you the sense of the rhythm that you're going to have in your subject, whether it's curves, a combination. It could be, usually most paintings are going to have a combination of rhythms, and we'll want, in order to have the painting to be more unified, we'll want to let one kind of rhythm in the painting kind of dominate, be the the rhythm is sort of taking charge and the others are sort of in background. So it's a good idea to study that. I like to consider at the very beginning, when I place the images, I like to consider the rhythm there. Consider the rhythm as I'm placing the images. In the preliminary drawing that I always place on the painting surface, whether it's watercolor, oil, pastel, doesn't make any difference. We just like to have to do that. And then within that, you'll find sometimes the way the light and shadow, the way the light is hitting the surfaces and creating shadow, you'll find some rhythm in that too, how some rhythms will be emphasized because of how the light and shadow are working. And I would say that you're working with that in mind all the way through in your painting. We emphasize it towards the finishing of the painting, or when we're in that, what I call the refinement phase of the painting, where we're putting in those things that bring the emphasis in the painting, and where we're putting other things, or we're de-emphasizing other areas. We're bringing the whole thing together as a unit. But thinking, having that concept, having that intention of rhythm all the way through, I think you'll find will make very helpful and also enhance your paintings in a way that you probably couldn't imagine. Sheila asked, how does value play the role in repetition that creates rhythm? Well, we can use the Van Gogh example, Sheila, to show you how value can play that role in the repetition. If the value is going to play the role in the sense that, in the way that it emphasizes. So if you see the very, very dark, like you see in the Van Gogh, and behind me here, where am I? I'm right over here. I lost my picture, Roger. That's all right. That's all right. There we go. Okay. You see right here, this flowing rhythm. It's a combination of flowing and stabilizing rhythm, where we'll have the very, very dark shape against the light shape. The values will emphasize the rhythm. That is the main role that we see that value plays in, when value contrast especially plays when we're creating rhythm. The degree to which the images are contrasting in value will emphasize the rhythm. And you can see on the other side over here, the very, very dark tree, you see how it emphasizes that rhythm as it moves up against the lighter background behind the tree. You'll find that the rhythm is more strongly emphasized there and over here than it is, say, up here where the values are closer. Those seem to be more flowing one end to the other because of the value relationships. If you squint, you can see it really, really good, how the closeness of the value, say in this area right here, is causing that to flow, the rhythm, it flows more smoothly from this area over into, if I get there, this area. So the role that the value contrast plays then is the degree to which it emphasizes. Now I might make a comparison here I think is very interesting, and that is that in terms of the rhythm of music, that if the rhythm is going very fast or very slow, then that is sort of equivalent to the length of a directional movement, whether it's a fast movement or a slow. In other words, the longer a directional movement, the slower it is, and the shorter a directional movement, the faster it is. So if I move on this side and right up in here, you can see that the edge is right here where the value contrast is really strong. You see how that is a faster movement, faster rhythm than the one as it's coming down the side right there. You see the similar thing on the other side. So if you could just kind of make your finger go along the edge right here. Y'all know I'm seeing this backwards, so I'm just trying to keep up with it. See, that sort of flows as it goes up, 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 and then all of a sudden we have a fast movement right here, a very fast movement. And we see that emphasized because of the value contrast, because the rhythm, the image in front is so much darker than the images behind it. And also in music, the very loud rhythms are, if you're thinking of the rhythm in a drum, I'm not sure if I'm kind of mixing elements of music, but we'll have loud and soft. The rhythm, the feeling of the rhythm. If you have a very loud rhythm in music, it's a sharper feeling. It gets your attention. Whereas if you have a very quiet beating of the drums, for example, usually it's the drum beat is where the rhythm is. If we have a full orchestra or a band, that drum is the thing that's guiding the rhythm. And so, yes, I probably went further into that than you want me to, but you know, all you gotta do is ask a question, and then I just go on and on and on, because I get so excited I forget what the question was. No, see, that was where, how does value play into the repetition that creates the rhythm? It's more of the emphasis in that repetition. Remember, the repetition is the actual repeat of it, but the emphasis of it is in the value. And then Cheryl says, how can I use stabilizing vertical rhythm without having to stop the eye? Well, if you're using, think about a row of trees. The repetition guides the eye. And so, or if you're looking, if we think back at the cashmere painting that John Singer Sargent did, how about a sip of coffee? If the repetition creates the rhythm. So it's just the straight directional movement of the stabilizing line, whether it's horizontal or vertical or diagonal. Remember, just one is not the rhythm. That's just the directional movement. But when it repeats itself, it repeats beside one repetition. If it's a vertical, then it's going moving from right to left or left to right. And that guides the eye. That creates the rhythm that guides the eye. So it doesn't stop the eye. When it's a rhythm, it guides the eye. Same thing if it's a horizontal rhythm. We see a little bit of that in the Van Gogh, a little bit of the horizontal movement right down here. How you see that because it's repeated, it's moving the eye with it as it's repeated. And that's what repetition does. It moves the eye with it. Repetition, visual rhythm, it's the repetition that moves the eye with it. So none of the visual rhythms can actually stop the eye, because the fact that they're repeated guides the eye and moves the eye with them. Same as the sound of, in time, in music, the sound, it's that repetition that pulls us through the music. If we just have one note, we're stuck with that one note. But when it starts repeating itself, we start getting rhythm. Hope that helps. Cheryl, you can let me know if it does. Let's see. Oh, Sheila says it's very clear. Good. I like it when it's very clear. It makes me, kind of reinforces, makes me feel like I don't have to explain it any further when it's very, very clear. You know, when you think about the combination of rhythms too, it's very, well, sometimes, and especially in more modern paintings, we will see just one rhythm, or maybe one rhythm emphasized. I'm thinking more in terms of the Andy Warhol soup cans, Campbell soup paintings, where he's got that very same repetition over and over. It's kind of like reading a newspaper, the way he's got them lined up. Same kind of repetition over. And I didn't mention that in the video because that is that kind of rhythm we may see in some paintings where the painter is exploring things that are lined up beside each other. We may see that, but it's called a static rhythm. It's also called regular rhythm. I don't know where that came from, but anyway, where it's just repeated the same. It's the same image, same kind of image, and it's repeated the same way as it's moving across the canvas. And in Warhol's Campbell soup paintings, they're all the same size, and they are just like reading a newspaper. That's kind of what he's doing to us. It's that vertical, that stabilizing vertical of that can, Cheryl, that gets repeated and repeated and repeated. And each individual can has just a little bit of suggestion, at least, of the flowing movement. But the flowing is not what's emphasized. It's that repetition of the vertical or the stabilizing movement that is emphasized. And since it's all the same, it becomes very static. I can't recall right now. There are some modern painters that try that same thing with. I've seen bottles lined up on a shelf, or bottles lined up and on several shelves, like shelves. Shelves usually are very, very well. Sometimes they are, but if you can imagine shelves that are the same height all the way up, and then you have the same kind of bottle lined up on each one of those shelves, and doing the painting of that. It's sort of a modern approach to painting, but it is one example of how realistic painting could be done with that kind of rhythm. Okay, are there any other questions about this whole concept of rhythm? Well, you ask your questions and then I'll give you your answers. Another thing, pardon me. Oh, Bobsy asked, do you put music on to listen to that complements the subject? I put music on to listen to. It's usually complementing more what I'm in the mood to listen to, but I can't say that it doesn't influence the subject. One of my favorite, composer, I guess, because I don't, when I'm painting, somehow I don't relate to the modern music, and I certainly don't want any vocals while I'm painting. The vocals distract me. I only want instrumentals playing when I'm painting, and my favorite music to listen to when I'm painting is Chopin's music, Chopin's compositions. Also, Mozart's compositions. I find some of Mozart's compositions, those can be a little jarring, and the same thing with some of Beethoven's compositions can be a little jarring. But I sure do enjoy the Chopin, especially some of the etudes, the ones that will sort of kind of keep you moving along, kind of flow along. And sometimes the rhythm I'm listening to will influence the rhythm I'm emphasizing in the painting. But I don't intentionally try to match the music I select to listen to while I'm painting. I don't intentionally try to match that with the rhythm I'm seeing or going to be more influenced by that's in the subject. I wouldn't be surprised though, Bob, see if some of that doesn't happen unconsciously, because we make a lot of unconscious decisions, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. That's an interesting question though. Cheryl, I keep forgetting that repetition aspect. Yes, thank you. Okay. The tree in the Van Gogh behind you is a single tree, but it is the texture of the brushwork in that object lens. It's repetition. Yes, these single images will do that. And after we finished a video that I did for you today, I wish I had shown more of the internal rhythm in that blue jay, because you can see it. There's some of those flowing the curves within the belly of that blue jay. But yes, it's the way in Van Gogh's case, in this case right here, it's very close in value, but the way he used his brushwork, you see, he's creating those rhythms. And also remember that the repetition that we see of the rhythm. Let me go over here like this. The repetition that we see of the rhythm of the edges of the shape is repeating with the rhythm in the rest of the painting. And that's what we're doing. It's not just a little section of rhythm over here and a section of rhythm over here and so on, but we're looking at the whole painting as being having within it a repetitions or the rhythmic or the kinds of rhythm, I should say, that are expressing what we're looking at, usually expressing the shape of what we're looking at, but also could be expressing what that shape is doing. Whether the shape is let's say if it's say a person or even a tree, whatever the shape is doing. If the wind had been blowing on that tree here, and it really blowing hard on that tree, it might have bent it. Well, that have been created a different kind of rhythm. See, so yeah, it's always the repetition, but repetition throughout the painting, not just in the individual images of the painting, and finding in all the images, repetitions are rhythms that are directional movements that they have in common, and it's the directional movements that all of the image in the painting will have in common that are going to create the rhythm of the entire piece. And often as you found in well, I'm just talking to those who attended Wednesday's workshop now, but that the rhythm, the visual path will often be influenced by the rhythm. Whatever the visual path is doing, the rhythm is emphasizing that visual path. And sometimes the rhythm is even being created within the visual path. But we're looking at the whole painting and how the images in the whole painting have within them directional movements that get repeated in other places in the whole scene. And that's what we look for that enables us to create the rhythm that's in that scene. Cheryl says, oh, a minute. Okay, hey, back up a minute, Diane. All right, Sheila's next question. Can be challenged me to find the rhythm in certain types of abstract art, by example, Jackson Pollock. Right. Could you touch on that, and if the discordance might be then the intended rhythm? Yeah. Now, Jackson Pollock's paintings are all about rhythm, pretty much all about rhythm. And what you're doing there, what you're watching for in his paintings, Sheila, are the directions in which those drips are going. And sometimes you'll see a pattern of movement within those directions how the directional movement or how the direction is moving. And a lot of times you're going to see lots of curves. You're going to see lots of curve. You see sometimes some straighter lines too, but there's a lot of overlapping too, because he was overlapping his dribbles are one with the other. But we often, they tells of him, actually his action of painting, his method of painting was more like a dance than anything else. He was just throwing paint, these huge paintings on the floor, and he's got these big buckets, and he's just throwing the paint, dipping a stick or brush or whatever, and just throwing the paint in a rhythmic motion, causing it to land on the canvas in a rhythmic motion. Now, you look at the whole thing, there's we find in his paintings a lot of staccato that's caused by all the vibrations that we get between all the value contrasts and all the overlapping that takes place in those swirling motions. So if you try to look for one thing at a time, first of all, just try to locate curving, just look for curving, nothing else, just curving, and then look for straight, curving straight, curving straight. Those are the only two directional movements we have. So that's what you look for always. Where do I see curving? Where do I see straight? And then you can look, well, if I'm seeing curving, what kind of curving is it? Is it a curving that continues like a circle does? Or does it loop around and kind of like the swirls behind here, like Van Gogh's swirls do right here? See how they sort of loop around? And or is it going, or is the movement straight? Or is it a combination of curving and straight? So you'll find that you'll find his paintings, Jackson Pollock's paintings, very rhythmic when you start looking just for that. But if you're trying to make an image out of it, don't bother, because it's not there, and especially not in his later work. And we'll see, and you see lots of rhythm in Van Gogh's paintings too, especially where he's in his later work, and especially at times when he was more in a more exuberant mood, or more energetic frame of mind. We find lots of the directional movement. We find a lot of curves and straights. Just look for that as directional movement, and then when it starts repeating itself, there's where the rhythm is. Let's see now, did I answer that? Sheila, could you touch on that? And if discordance might be the intended rhythm. Well, not so much discordance as repetition. Maybe my explanation. Let me know, Sheila, if that cleared it up for you. Cheryl says maybe I'm confused with placement in rhythm or something. I don't know, Cheryl. Placement is important because that's what's going to determine how we keep the eye within the whole picture plane. Picture plane is you know what the picture plane is. It's where a painting is going to be, whether it's paper or canvas. Doesn't matter what it is. But we as painters don't want to mislead the viewer's eye, or we don't want to carry the viewer's eye out and not give it a place to come back in. We want to find ways to keep the viewer's eye within the painting, and at the same time have that painting express what we're feeling about something, or with the rhythm, or have our individual expression within there. So placement of how these repetitions, how these directional movements are placed, that is when we're placing images, that's going to become a part of how we place the image and what we're emphasizing in that image, whether we're emphasizing which and how much of the directional movements and how much of the variation of those directional movements we are emphasizing. Yes, that's going to have something to do with it. So let me know if that cleared it up a little bit. Lisa asked, just moved to a new house and am beginning to decorate. I can see how the principles of rhythm can be used effectively in placement of objects in decorative design. Absolutely. And you'll find that interior decorators are playing with rhythm an awful lot, and they're repeating lines. You know, they will often talk about that, how you're emphasizing a line here, or by repeating that line someplace else, or they call it line, I'm calling it directional movement. Directional movement is what it is. Every time we make a line, we create a directional movement. So you're absolutely right about that. Our environment, and we'll find that we have, perhaps when we set up our own environments, we most likely are unconsciously creating a rhythmic environment according to what makes us feel more at home or more comfortable. Of course, some people base it more on how they feel other people are going to react to it, but I don't go there. Okay, let's see. Cheryl says, thank you, Diane. The subject has really nudged me to think about patterns and movement. I have a great appreciation for Van Gogh's work. Yeah, the movement is what creates the patterns. So when we find that pattern of movement, is going to give us the pattern of the rhythm. And yeah, and that's a great thing, because when we really start focusing our attention, when we're looking at our subject matter for our paintings, and we start focusing our attention not on what it is, but what is it made up of. And you all, those of you who have watched me do this stuff, know I keep saying that. You know, it's not what it is, but what makes it appear the way it does to your eye, what makes it speak to your eye. And the rhythm is very much an important part of that. All the things work together. All those, the visual elements work together. And remember that it's the visual elements and how we use them to express our subjects that are creating this rhythm. So yeah, and doesn't it help when we begin to look at artists' work in terms of the bigger picture of working with images and using those images to create the whole painting, we begin to gain a higher appreciation for artists that we otherwise may not have understood. I get so impatient with our culture that it doesn't teach babies from the very beginning to look at things like this. Well, babies really do see these things, and then as they get older, adults train it out of them. And you know, that doesn't look like a bird to me, you know, that kind of thing. It's a bunch of, well, anyway. All right, let's see now. Where are we? Jennifer asks, the benefit of multiple tabs, I can look up Jackson Pollock's paintings. Yes, you can right here while we were talking. No, I might get a little jealous of you on that one. But anyway, there is a wonderful site, and I've mentioned it before. Let me mention it again here. There's a wonderful site called wikiart.org. It's WIKIART, one word, .org. They have a wonderful collection of many of the master painters, and not only that, but they have different references. They have areas where you can say go in and look at just for different schools of painting, or just different genres of painting, or even different mediums of painting. Or you can go specifically to one painter, and they will list all the works there that are not under copyright still. You know, we do have that copyright law, so you won't find artists there whose work is still under copyright. If I remember correctly, the work goes out of copyright at 70 years after an artist's death. And so, some of our real masters, like Richard Schmid, Richard's only been gone from us now for like 3 or 4 or 5 years. I can't remember now, but not long enough to be on WikiArt. But you can go to his website. Usually, artists these days who are our current masters usually will have websites or some access to galleries that carry their work. And so, yes, okay. Now, where are we now? Huh? Sheila. Yes, it does clarify things for me. I will try again from that perspective. Good idea. Let's see, multiple. Okay, look at Jackson Pollock. Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, there's something else about WikiArt I wanted to tell you. When you bring up a painting there, when you click on a painting there, you can have the choice on the right-hand side. I think now I know you can do this from a laptop or a computer, and from a tablet. I'm not quite sure how it works if you're logging in from your phone, but anyway, there's a tab there to the right where you can enlarge it. And you can get a closer look at the brush strokes or what the brush strokes are doing. Because a lot of times, just as in the Van Gogh piece behind us, a lot of times the brush strokes are playing a huge role. The way the brush strokes are moving play a huge role in the rhythm of the painting. And so you can bring those up really close. And a lot of the gallery websites, museums, especially the major museums websites, and the major galleries. I'm talking about the National Gallery of Art in both the United States. It's the National Gallery. Ours is called National Gallery of Art, and also in England and some of the other European countries. They will have abilities to get to enlarge the painting in a really more clear, a much clearer image, where you can really get a close-up look at the brush strokes, and you can begin to see how those brush strokes are playing such a large role in creating the rhythm of the painting as well as the expression of the whole painting. So that's just something to give y'all some homework, something that you can do and really get the feeling of this whole idea, concept rather, not just an idea, this concept that how we can use rhythm to enhance our work. Okay, let's see. Was there any other question coming in? Oh, we're almost at countdown. Just, 4 minutes. Okay, last call for questions. Cheryl, working with my homework, I'm intrigued with enhancing the rhythm of the subject I've chosen. Should the rhythm actually lead us somewhere? Lead us throughout the painting, that's all. And that's pretty much what it does. If you look, I'm trying to think of some example. Well, any of them, look at how the rhythm leads you throughout the whole painting. That it can be a combination. It's just like in music, you know how the rhythm guides you through the tune of the music, and it may not be just one rhythm, because if you're listening to a band or an orchestra, you might hear 2 or 3 rhythms together, interweaving, working together. There might be one basic rhythm. And just like in painting, we might have one overall rhythm, say the circular rhythm that we find, or the curving, flowing, I like to call them by their expressive names, the flowing rhythm that we see. Let me get out of the picture so that the Van Gogh's flowing movement that you can see here is pretty much leading us throughout the whole painting. And if you watch how your eye will fall, you'll see that your eye will take, the rhythm will take you out but pulls you back in. It takes you out but pulls you back in. And that when we see the rhythm emphasized, in some places we can also see how our eye wants to move in other places too. So in painting, you really are usually going to find a combination. In a good painting, you're going to find a combination of rhythms. And here in Van Gogh's, we have that. It's that circular, that flowing rhythm is the predominant rhythm, but he's used the stabilizing rhythm, especially in the landscape part, in some areas of the sky and the tree, that's stabilizing just that directional, that straight directional movement. And then he's got the staccato rhythm, those short broken brush strokes that are throughout the whole thing. It's kind of like having a little behind a little repetition of staccato that would be behind, say, some flowing violin. It's got the flowing rhythm of the violin. See, I'm knocking on my desk, on Roger's desk. It is here to kind of communicate to you how that works in music. Mary Ellen says the static work, like Warhol soup cans, I believe each can is exactly the same. If I were to make a static painting by repeating a particular shape, would it still be static if I changed? Depends on how much you change it. If you'll notice, Warhol changes the kind of soup that's in each can. If you look down, you'll see some of the various kinds of soups that Campbell makes. On the labels, you'll see that is the change. That really is, as far as I can remember, that's really the only change he makes in the Campbell soup cans. So remember that what's going to be emphasized is the degree to which it's repeated. So if you wanted to do a static painting like that, or a static painting with static movement, it's the repetition of the same image, but within the images they can have little bits of variation. But if the image is the same, it's static. When it starts getting variations in it, say if you vary the space that's between them, then you have varied and created a more something that's a little bit less than static. It depends. It's so hypothetical. It's hard for me to call up ways, but you can see variation within the image and repeating that same image, but having variations within the image. The rhythm itself will remain static. You could actually change, but you could change the color a little bit too. Let's see. What? Have we got another one there, Roger?
Right here, some of the values you follow up.
She's adding to it. Oh, I see what it got away from her. If I were to try to make a static painting by repeating a particular shape, would it still be static if I changed some of the values? It's the shape that's going to make it. The emphasis might change if you change some of the values. But if it would be something to be interesting to play with, to see at what point would the rhythm itself start changing depending on the emphasis that you put on it. Did I answer it, Mary Ellen? I hope so. Bobsy says, when you start a painting, make a sketch, do a no-tan, plan your palette, recognize the rhythm. Can you just let it go free thought and paint? Sure. Yeah, once you get yourself thoroughly informed, really you shouldn't have to think about it anymore. It's going to be once you get yourself involved in the subject, explore the subject for its potential. Remember its potential that causes all of this. I found that when I can stop thinking about it and just enjoy the act of painting, is when the painting has more life. And so once we have studied all this stuff in relation to the images or the scenes that we're working with, it's there. It's going to come. We don't have to think about it, except in any way that we might pause and take a look at what's happening, but certainly not while we're painting. Jennifer says the church spire behind you is interesting. It seems to interrupt the horizontal, but it mirrors the trees. Where is that? Church spire.
Just directly behind you here. I'll take you out of the picture.
Take me out of the picture.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mess up your.
No, you're out.
Oh, you're taking me out. Oh, I see. There you go. I was in front of the church spire. Yes, and right. Yeah, the church spire reinforces that stabilizing movement that we see in the tree. And what did she say? Church spire behind you is interesting. It seems to interrupt the horizontal. Yeah, and that you can see that adds a tension to it that makes it more interesting, because the flowing of the rhythm is so dominant that it carries right through. But that interruption there kind of interrupts the flow just a little bit, and it emphasizes the vertical that we see in the tree in front, which creates a more of a little bit of a nice tension that sort of makes us pause a bit before we go ahead. But you see, it's so similar. It's similar in color. It's not similar in value. It does repeat something on the values we see in the sky, but it has enough similarity in it that it doesn't jerk you. Say if the whole thing were red, we would really be jarred by it. But it has so many similarities in it that it's not jarring. It's just a nice little pause, and that's kind of neat. Good observation there. Was that Jennifer that said that?
Yeah.
Yeah, good observation. Hey, folks, we're over time. YouTube's going to kick us off if we don't kick ourselves off. Hey, this has been fun, and y'all have asked some wonderful questions, and thanks so much for joining us. Hope you'll join us next. Wait a minute, Roger, what?
I have one little side note.
Mm-hmm.
Campbell's Soup is planning to remove the word soup from their label.
Oh, they are.
They're changing it.
They're changing. That going to be Campbell Soup, no more just Campbell?
Just Campbell.
How the heck we going to know what's in there? Okay, folks, there's your trivia for the day. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope we can see all of you again in November, when we will do this again for some other wonderful and exciting subject. So bye-bye for now.